Update 35 in the Lord of the Rings Online included a new instance cluster, including 2 3-mans, a 6-man, and eventually it will have a raid. I have run the 2 3-mans, and in this completely experimental video, I'm basically going to be reviewing the dungeons and the experience in them. In this short review, we'll be checking out Thaurisgar, the Vile Apothecary, and I should point out I did run on the solo version. You see, I actually have to track back to get to this NPC, who I should point out looks suspiciously like a Corsair. I wonder if there's somehow going to be story connection between him and us eventually going to Umbar with the expansion this fall. So as we go through this, I should also point out that I am testing the new Blue Line Warden if you are interested in the experience with that. This being a solo/duo version, I'm actually surprised there are elite trolls and even some signature mobs on top of that. Of course, just because of the way I play the game, I decided to AoE pull everything, and there are some routes I noticed, but there wasn't really much interesting about this besides I was just kind of shocked that they had full elite mobs. And sometimes that's not out of the ordinary for a solo/duo version of an instance, but usually at that point you get like an NPC to give you some extra help. But I actually double checked, I backtracked to the beginning when I noticed this. I will probably see that coming forward. I'm going to just fast forward quite a bit more because it does take a while, but yes, actually backtracked, and there was nothing to get an ally to help you throughout this. So I don't know how other classes would actually handle this and what their experience would be, but it was tougher than expected, I will say, on the Warden. So what I noticed is on the right path here, if I can slow this down, it takes forever. And we picked up that lever on the right side here. So if I show my cursor, you will see the lever was here on the right path on the minimap. You can see it there, and that opens this doorway here. That was a kind of interesting discovery moment, I will say. Unfortunately on VLC, this is obviously the first style of this video I have done, but I'm using VLC to do this recording and play back my footage. But it takes forever for the keybinds to actually work to speed up and slow down the video. Otherwise, it's a very convenient feature. So in this room, it's a pretty large room, and you'll see I pretty much pull everything again. There are a few interesting things about this room, and this room and some of the later experience in this dungeon is actually what motivated me to do a video like this. So we see the gate there. It says the gate is locked. That is going to be behind my character from this position. So eventually we're supposed to go there. We're supposed to find a way to get there. And I thought that was kind of interesting that you essentially had to discover this. I do have floating names on so we can see a bunch of items you have to interact with, but just clearing out all the trash essentially that I could find at least. And that does take a moment to defeat. I am playing in the blue line, which I maybe didn't necessarily have to do, but I was kind of just stuck with playing that at the moment. But what you'll see is I start to click these cauldrons, and there is a mechanic with those that you have to click them in a specific order, but I did not know that. I could, for all I knew, these were involved with quests or something like that at this point, but I think it's relatively quickly clearly became a dungeon mechanic. So clicked all the cauldrons, and well, eventually I will click that last cauldron and it will actually work. I think there were some lag issues going on, but you'll see the cauldron bubble and fizzle out. So this basically tells you that to advance in the dungeon, you have to click these cauldrons in the right order. So I kept actually trying this a few times, and you'll see that I tried a whole bunch of times. We can actually skip forward a little bit because eventually I did actually find the mechanic for this. And I thought it might be you have to actually like go around the room, maybe you discover something that tells you, but you actually pick up this note. This was right by the cauldrons. We saw it on the ground earlier. I did not point it out, but there's this note that you pick up. And in this note, it says right here on the left, all that whoever wrote this note is, they have to remember which order corresponds to which brazier, but it actually tells you above that the braziers hanging from each door in this room will signify a solution. So what I did was I actually looked for that. I looked for each door in the room and the braziers hanging above it, and if that told me the solution somehow. But the problem with that is that if we see this, I will point it out. But yes, right here, there is a door and there's a brazier above it. There was nothing that really indicated which cauldron to get to. And the other doors in the dungeon some of them didn't even have, in this room I mean, didn't even have a brazier. So I was kind of lost a little bit. And something you might have noticed, and if you watched me actually run through this, that the note that I was reading actually had more details on it. So this was a little bit of an odd moment where it felt like there was some discovery element in the instance and actually an interesting puzzle that was almost ruined, is how I'd end up describing it, with the note here where I just had to read like one line further. It was even visible earlier. It said of the varying mixing potencies and discovered the order. So you can go with any of these orders and it will work. But I don't know, that was just a little bit of an odd experience. And to me, it almost seems pointless to have you go through all that just to be able to do that. But even at this point, the dungeon wasn't necessarily bad. And if I ignore that one mechanic, actually fairly enjoyable. And of course, I don't mind fighting elite mobs. I just run in here with a boss, which I believe is another elite. So I have all these different mobs chasing me, and I'm in the last boss room. This is just to clarify, we did make it to the last boss room. I just kept running and wasn't fully aware of that as I was going through this. But we do that. We dispatch this boss relatively quickly, I guess, for a tank spec. We pick up some of the items and the Vile tank here. So there's actually 2 bosses in this room. And this was the other big letdown of this dungeon, unfortunately. So this guy plays with the Vile bile pile. But what you have to do is you have to destroy these bile tanks so many times to damage him. You just keep destroying these over and over and over again. Of course, I'm stuck in tank spec. Basically no point of being tank spec because I'm not taking any damage anyway. There's basically no mechanic but destroying these bile tanks over and over and over again to defeat him. I think this took a couple to few minutes. Actually, it did take a few minutes. I don't know. That was a big letdown moment, and that's actually one of the things with this dungeon. It made it ultimately end on a sour note. If you can't tell, I'm kind of talking as if I dislike this instance, when I don't think I actually overall dislike it, but that's just the impression it left with me, which was a bit unfortunate. I think there's a lot of other interesting things and even good parts about this was just the solo version, but there were a lot of good other parts of it unrelated to the cauldrons and that like huge discovery buildup, and I was actually excited to try to discover it. And the mechanic, at least for the first time, it probably would have been annoying multiple times, and then just to find out it's in the node and you just have to read the node and that tells you where it is. Setting those aside, it was actually not too bad of an experience. Now, if you're curious loot-wise, unfortunately I did not have good luck with loot. I actually ran one of the 3-mans in the full 3-man version, soloing it just because I wanted to do that for fun. And I did not get good loot from that. I actually did not get any gear. I did get a cosmetic from one of the chests and otherwise got, I think, enhancement runes is pretty much it. I did maybe get a delving box though, as you can see in my inventory. Rather, not a delving box, but an essence box. But yeah, besides the ending that ultimately left me demoralized as how I described it, it was not too bad of an instance. And so far, my initial impressions with the Return to Carn Dum instance content has actually been better than expected. Not that I expected the dungeons to be bad, but all the extra questing content, even repeatable quests that came with it, it just added a layer of interest that I was not expecting, because in the betas, as I have talked about before, I don't like to really spoil content for myself, so having a fresh look at that with and expectations that I had based on basically previous endgame and group content in the game, I think the stuff surrounding the actual instance content themselves was pretty good. And with all that as a brief preview, I'm very excited to check out the next 3-man, and let me know what y'all think of a video like this. Again, just something relatively random that I decided to try because I just wanted to cover more instance content in this game, and I didn't quite want to do like a full in-depth guide as I had done with the Gundabad instances, but doing an almost hybrid walkthrough review type video of the new instances I think can be a good balance between something more in-depth guide-wise and just like a very casual reaction impressions type video. But enough rambling, and we can't spoil this whole Poison Gardens instance, so I will leave that there. And if you all enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and thanks for watching, everyone.